How's everybody doing?
Hi, good. How are
I think
you?
good. I'm a little fried from having traveled back from the East Coast at 2 or 3 in the morning the other day.
Oh,
Oh,
So I'm a little frazzled, but I'm here.
how's the rain?
The rain was awful, and that's why it was so late that I got back from the East Coast. So yeah, my flight was delayed by the time it was done 3 hours or 3.5 hours, and
Ooh.
I was on the opposite coast time by then, but not quite, and had to get up at crack of dawn. And yeah, it's been a long 48 hours since I got back.
Yeah, I
Not
was thinking
even
about you.
36 hours. Yeah.
You can see out the window there. We're just starting to get that storm come in.
Yeah. Remind me where you are?
Los Angeles, Long Beach,
Oh, yeah.
John Wayne Airport.
Got it. Okay. So it's coming up the coast to us then soon, I assume. I don't know. We haven't
Oh,
had
I
any.
thought you already got it and it's coming down.
We had some apparently on the day that I was flying in, but I was talking about the East Coast storms that were gale force, and
Oh, okay.
like morning flights all got canceled, and I was an end of day, and it was getting pushed and pushed. I was afraid I was going to be sleeping in the airport
Yeah,
because I had a big presentation the next day, so I had to be somewhere that I could get to a computer. But um, yeah, but now I'm here, and I prefer the Portland rain to the East Coast rain because
because it what?
it's warmer. Oh, I'm
Yes.
not on the right video. Hang on a sec. I need to switch. Well, it's there. Why is it giving me fuzzy backgrounds? I don't want fuzzy backgrounds when I'm showing to you guys. I might have to pop out and back in again briefly just to get my zoom to change. Let me see if I can change that without.
yeah, and I can't see myself. Can you see me?
I can
Yep.
see. Yep.
Yep.
Uh,
Oh, okay, great. Hello, everyone.
Hi. Hi.
Because I'm like, where am I? I don't see myself.
I can never remember how to get my background not backgroundy. Let me see if I can do that in a Zoom meeting. Settings. And background. There we go. I do not want a virtual background. Yay, there's a studio.
Yay.
Didn't even have to log out. So welcome, my diehard folk who have made it through 37 sessions.
And
That's
enjoyed
all.
every minute of it.
Good.
That's all.
Yeah, this is number 37, and it's almost exactly 2 years worth of time because we started the first Wednesday in January was when I kicked off the project, and I was, surprised at how many people registered for it, and then surprised again at the slice of that of folks that even showed up at it because it was like the 3rd of January or something. It was right in the new year when we did that very first session. So it's been an interesting journey for me, and I hope that you guys have learned some things along the way. I know I have. And
Absolutely.
we're gonna learn
Yes,
two
of
last
course.
settings today, and then chat and do whatever we want, and so on. Oh, I've got my usual notices. Let me toss the notices into chat just so they're there. In case you don't recall or haven't come across my many postings, our next year's project, if you choose to join us, is the
You
what's in the
make it
box.
sound like Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I was trying for
Tuesday.
that. Um,
Go ahead.
so the mission on this one, and I'll show some stuff after we get done with the rest of the Cogswell stuff. I'll give some teasers about what's in the box that I've got on my bench. Is to go back to those projects that we jammed out on for a little bit, that we didn't finish because we didn't like the design. We were stuck on something technical, or we broke a stone, or many reasons why we might not have accomplished the project that we started. Some of mine are 10 years old in the box still. And that means that those projects have made it through multiple iterations of me having cleared things out, because my rule is to either decide to, I have to when I get to 50, I have to cut that pile in half at least. And sometimes that's about tossing things out or scrapping them. Sometimes it's about just finishing them as I originally planned, and other times it's about redesigning. So we're gonna probably have a selection of those for as long as I have the energy to keep going once a month on those. And also hopefully other folks will bring things from their boxes to the bench, and we can talk about the technical challenges or share design ideas amongst the group and so on. It's going to be a little more collaborative, hopefully. I'll certainly have something that I'm doing as sort of leading the exercise. So you see what I'm going through, and I'll be talking about my design work as I go and what my thought process is. But the goal is that we're sharing ideas really, and that it is you're working in studio if you can, or even if it's just bringing a sketchbook to try and rethink something if you can't make it to the studio, or bring a few stones that you want to make something out of, you just can't figure out what it is. So that's going to be a little more whatever the direction it takes thing. We don't have a book behind us to sort of structure the step by step that we're doing. And so it'll be bringing ideas to the table is what it comes down to. In case you want to keep track of the rest of my stuff that's going on, then we've got all the usual links to my various social media and all that, plus the link to the YouTube so that you can see these sessions we've been doing. And the only class I currently have committed to next year is the live hollow forms at Diane Weimer Studio, just outside of LA in Long Beach. And I think there are still a few spots in that. I'm not sure. It's been filling up a little bit, but I think it's pretty full. I mean, I think there's still room, even though it's not quite full. Yes, the words are going to be hard today when I've been flying from coast to coast, I can tell. As a reminder, any of you who are on here can use my Rio for Schools code. So that's there. In case you would like to hop on, and if you're running out of the 6 months of bonus pricing that they give you, you can always pick one or more of the teachers that are giving you codes and put them in. It helps them, it helps us. And today our mission is to set our cut card faceted setting and dun 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 our emerald cut. Part of the reason that I'm tired is I was trying to finish something special around that emerald cut that you'll get to see in a few moments. But yeah, and then after that we'll look at the board and do any Q&A and do anything you guys want to show off, and maybe toast a good 2 years run and to John Cogswell, and thanks to him for all the knowledge that he has passed down and continues to pass down through both his book and the people that he's taught along the way. So sound like a plan? All right. So first up is what I hope is a quick setting for us. Oops, that's not very zoomed in, is it? Let me get my camera a little closer for you guys.
Are you spotlighted?
I am not spotlighted. Thank you for that reminder. And I am recording, but I'm not spotlit. There we go. That makes it so much bigger. All right. Okay, so what we have is the card cut setting that we did for this tiny little faceted, I think it's a CZ or a manufactured something or other for this exercise. That is nicely fitted in there once I actually get it placed. And if you look at this chapter again, you'll remember that John gives us a couple different ways that he actually sets these prongs. One of them being, if it's narrow enough at the top, which this one is, you can just push them down and over to a certain extent. There we go. And the other is that sometimes you need to cut away. Oh, I'm out of range, sorry. Sometimes you need to cut away a little slice out of the metal. And I'm going to draw that one for you, although they have got some great drawings in the book, just so we can all remember that there's more than one way to do this. Because that's useful. And the larger the stone is, the more likely you are to have some pretty structural uprights for it. So some of his designs have something where he does maybe more like this. And then we've got our little cutaway for the setting.
Bring it into camera.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So sometimes he'll have a setting that's a little more consequential. And then this comes across and we have the opposite side, which goes off into 3D. And so let's say that our setting is a little bit more of this heavy style. And we've got one coming in and we've got one going out, and then there's one over there on the opposite side. So what he will do for these is he'll put a tiny little saw cut down, partway down on the side of each, giving himself just enough that if our stone, let me do this in 2 colors because this is looking messy already. So if our stone is sitting here, faceted or cabbed, it doesn't matter for this one, but since we're doing a faceted one, we'll get this little facet in here. What we're going to do is take the slice that we sawed down just to the point where we're hitting the fold over point, and then this gets pushed down to become the prong. So you still have a piece lifted in the shape that you originally created your card setting for, but you're pushing down just a segment of each one of the not, they're not quite prongs, but it becomes a prong by us having sliced off that little bit so that it folds over and stays connected, right? This is a very messy drawing and I apologize, but he's got really nice drawings in the book for you. And so just know that if your design should not be limited by needing it to be pointy at the top, like we've chosen to do, you can make something that is more consequential, that's bulkier, that has, you know, balustrades and fancy things coming off of it. So it can do all kinds of things as long as you have a component that you can slice down or prong over to hold the stone. Because this setting consists of making sure that we have a space beneath any coulette of the stone so that it doesn't bounce, but, you know, doesn't hit it. So our point hangs out in space there, but otherwise it's resting on the cutaways that we have made to fit. And I'm going to take this stone out of mine and try and zoom in enough that you can see the delicacy of the little resting spot that we made when we did this one. Because on mine, it's not the wide prong, it's the very, very fine prong. So let me first zoom in so you can see it in place. Where am I going? Here we go. Not far enough. Let's see if I can get it any closer. Come on. There we go. All right, so you can see that it is just resting on that little spot there. If I take it back out, you can hopefully see that there is the tiniest of little ledges that we built into this. Just enough for it to rest on, right? All the way around. We've got a matched set because we cut these as a set, right? And even if we did one of the fancier versions of this that wasn't just a cut across, if we tried one of those 6s or something like that, you're still creating that ledge for whatever you're resting it on, whether it's the faceted set version of this or the cabochon. You still need that lip for it to rest against. The difference between the two is just that the coulette hangs out down below that so that there's room. And I didn't need to put quite as much, get back into screen. I didn't need to put quite as much gap as I did underneath. I could have gotten away with half that easily, and it wouldn't have hit the stone. But you do still want some amount so that it doesn't bang down against the cross piece. Not getting my locations right. There we go. All right, so
Rachel, how did we measure that depth on that?
the depth, we took the from the top of the stone to the bottom of the coulette, from the table to the coulette, and we used that as our minimum overall because we knew that when it rests up on the edge, if we take the total height, I'm waving my fingers at you and I'm not showing you anything. If we take the total height, then the difference of the where it's resting to the top of the table is enough to be the difference down below, right? Because it lifts up that much off of our total height. So I would start there. You can always make it deeper if you want to, but that's sort of the minimum so that you won't hit the bottom.
Yes, thank you. I was just, trying to figure out how we measure that and how, why there's so much distance between the coulette and the bottom or the top of the.
On mine, because I ended up starting out with a design that went sort of spaceshipy looking to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, stylistically, it looked more interesting to me, tall like that. But could I have cut this whole thing down a whole ton? Yeah, absolutely. I don't even need my prongs to be this tall. The setting on this one is going to be, because it doesn't have the heavy gauge, it's going to be a pushover. Oops, I got to zoom back out for you guys so you can see this. There we go. It's going to be a pushover, and I am using a setting tool that's used for prongs. I'm going to see how this does. I may have to play around with other tools. It depends on how much stability and how much support I can give against it. And I apologize, my hands are in the way a little bit on this one. I'm going to do the opposite sides and keep an eye on how it is resting on the, like that. It's trying to shift out. A little more stable. Already I can see I'm getting out of alignment. I go back a little bit. I thought that this would help me hold things, but I think it's going to just get in the way. So I'm going to go and hold it in my hands, and apologies that it's going to be a little rough to see at times. So I've got it shifted a little there. Get it settled back in place. Do the opposite. And I'm just doing a starting pushover on two sides to get it sort of held. And then I'm going to do the opposite sides. And before I finish it, I'm going to check to see how well leveled I am. But already you can see that it's starting to hold it in place, right? It's bent over, it's curved from the sharp points that I had. So I'm just checking around to make sure it's sitting where I expect it to. And then I'm going to continue on. A little more push down. It's going to get a little trickier the further you push. And depending on how thick your material is, it may start to wobble a little bit in terms of going straight across. This one is, one side's doing great. The other side needs a little encouragement to straighten out. So I'm just going to do that before I push a little bit more. The other two sides. So we're getting real close to done. There's just a lot of gapping on one side that I want to take. There's a lot of gapping on two sides that I want to take care of. Got to be careful not to put too much downward pressure right onto the stone, especially if your prongs are really long. So just keep an eye on how far you're going. One of these is being a lot more troublesome than the rest. I do not know why. Could be the angle I'm pushing at. Okay. Checking to see that that's solidly set, and it really, really is. Except I've still got a little more gapping. This one's beautiful. This one's set as far as I want it to be set. The ones here, and to a lesser extent here are not fully pushed over. So I'm going to do a little more encouragement. There we go. So the push that I'm doing is a combination of down and over. And it's very similar to prongs with this particular cut. This particular, the way that I've got my points shaped, it's very prong-like. So it's not terribly different than any other pushover that you'd do for a prong setting. It's going to be a little more challenging if you do one of the split ones that we just drew, because you have to sort of get something in the gap that you've cut to leverage over. There we go. Okay, so, and I really like this particular pointy cut. I'm going to zoom in again so you guys can see that. Come here. Focus. Yep, I'm not going to focus. Yeah, it's too close. Excuse me. So you're not focused on my little setting there. You're focusing on my fingers just fine. There we go. All right, so what we've got is a really nice curve pushover. It started its life as very pointy, but it's now very claw-like in the way that it wraps around and grips. And so I'm gonna just make sure that all of my crosses are crossing, and this one's a little bit off still. This is the one that was giving me trouble at the beginning, I think. So I'm just gonna repoint it. I can always do very careful touching up with a file. Where am I? Touching up with a file. I can polish them, I can burnish them a little bit if I need to. In this case, it just gets a little scratched up where I'm pushing down, so I'll probably take a rubberized wheel to it. But otherwise, that's set. And I like that sort of grip that it has on it, where it sort of claws its way around it. I keep going out of frame. I'm sorry, guys. There we go. That's better. So it just has sort of an elegant topper to it with those points. I could see doing a series of these. I could also see doing a version of them that's on an earring. Maybe if you want to have a cocktail ring, I probably wouldn't go quite this tall because it will catch on everything under the sun. But I know Carmen has no such qualms, so. So there's one. And that brings us down to only one setting. I think we may need a drum roll for this one. And it was special enough that I decided I wanted to make something to hold it in. So here we have the hollow form that I have made for that setting.
Whoa,
Polished,
Ooh,
but I
cool.
wanted to play around with the shape and do something with it. So that's going to sit in there.
what is the inlay? Is that cut out or inlay? Yeah.
This is
Bamboo.
all gold Kimbu.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't have a whole lot of time. This was done half before I left for, like, literally hours before I left for New England, and then the other half was last night. So it's a little more rushed than I would have liked. But I didn't want this after all this effort for this stone, I didn't want to just have it hanging out and be set.
It's really cool. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Your quickly done projects are much different than my quickly done projects.
So if you
Beautiful.
see all the really close-ups, you'd see the scratches and mars on it that I'm not thrilled by, but I wanted something that was gonna show off the setting. And just it's so the stone gang, I know I've been talking about this stone since we picked it for doing our setting. One of the reasons it's such a well-cut stone is I'm pretty sure it's one of those QVC late night specials, because I picked it up for, I think, like $7, maybe $10 at an auction house, you know what I mean, somebody's auction. And I just swept through and got 10 or 12 stones, and then realized that most of them had the markings on the container. You know, they're the plastic wrapped with the rubberized container and all of that. That really says it's probably the QVC. So it's not, while it's a great precise cut, it's definitely machine cut and not man-made cuts. But it has a cool effect to it, so that was what grabbed me. So on this setting, we are minutely snug, and because it has as many corners as it does, I'm gonna want to clean that up a little bit. So I've held off doing that until I had you guys in front of me. In this case, I'm going to use the barrel burrs, or they're also cylinder burrs. They're called both, either one. And I'm going to just trim a little bit out of the inside of the upper lip of the setting. Because they're not only is it machine cut, but it's very sharply cut on the corners. And so any little extra pressure on those is going to chip things out. The other thing that we're going to do is in every single corner, we're going to do that burr holing out, not hole, but a round burr to get a little bit of breathing room for the corners of the stone. And John, I was looking through the book before I started today, just so that I could remember if John has any advice on specifically on this cut, and he does not. He doesn't show any examples of the way that he goes about setting them, except that he has large rectangular stones. And on his large rectangular stones, he goes against the popular consensus. The popular consensus on cornered pieces, most artists like to do their corners first. And I learned from him, so I don't, because he does not generally do his corners first. And I think we talked about that on some of the other settings where he likes that version where you're doing a little bit, you're sawing down, you're doing a little bit, you're sawing down. So he on, if you look on, I did pull out the pages for you. In the hardcover book, where does he talk about the push downs? It's in the page 67, no, a little bit further on than that. That's where he's making the settings. So page 73, he has an example of a full rectangle, but he never shows us what to do with an emerald cut. I'm going to assume that we're doing a modification of what he does with the rectangle, which is, you'll see down at the bottom of page 73, he does the sides first and then works his way into those corners. Now, we don't have quite the steepness to our corners, so we're going to have a little bit less of the fight with sawing and pushing down. But we're going to take a very, very fine saw blade when it gets to those corners, and we're going to work them a little bit at a time, overlapping, and see if it does the trick.
So
we don't.
you had to take that into consideration when you soldered that bezel to your hollow form. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have squeaked to where I think it's going to work.
Oh, Oh.
Because yes, that's it. So what Wendy's referring to is I can't
hold it up again.
Yeah, sure. I can't have, well, it's going to be a little hard to see the angle of it, even if I do a close up. And I can draw this one probably to give you guys a sense of it, but you can see we have this lip where the stone is going to sit, right? That can't be very far below the top of the hollow form. I won't be able to push down, right?
Or saw the corners.
Pardon?
Or saw the corners.
I won't be able to, yeah, sawing the corners is going to be tricky on these. You're right.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very, very delicate process not to saw across the hollow form. But more importantly is that lip not being too far below this, because otherwise we are not pushing down at the right position to actually hold the stone. So how did I get such precision, you mind to ask?
Yes.
I built the hollow form to the height of that lip. Right, so I used that as my measure. And I actually built it a little shorter because I have a topper and a bottom. And for the sake of this piece, I did fine silver on the top, and that's part of why I'm not terribly excited by the finish on it. I didn't have thick enough gauge fine silver, so it's a little squishy. And then sterling silver for everything else.
Can I see the back again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the bezel flush?
It is cut to fit, but not as flush as I could have if I had not been doing this in a matter of 2 days.
Okay.
What I did to build this is I built the entirety of a hollow form frame, right? And then I then I built the frame that was going to fit exactly around. Let me draw this one because it's not going to make sense without the pieces that are taken away.
I'm impressed, Rachel. I'm impressed.
So first step was to make the frame, the full frame of the hollow form, right? Oops, I'm not far enough out for you guys to see the whole thing. Right. But then before I topped or bottomed it, I needed to have the inset, right? So what I did was I took my already built bezel and I made a same height wall. Do this in another color. Same height wall that exactly fitted like this. And I let it hang over a bit. Right? And then I moved that into place. I cut where I wanted that to fit. So I took this away and I soldered this piece in here, hanging out like that. So I haven't put a top or a bottom on this yet. All I'm doing is I did all my corners before I cut this out, you know, same as we do when we're doing any sharp cornering. So I built the frame, hard soldered my corners all the way around, giving it the stability and final shape that I knew I wanted. Then I was safe to cut the lip for this, soldered this into place, checked that my fit was what I needed it to be, meaning that this bezel snugly fit into that space. And then I built the hollow form, right? So then I ended up with a hollow form that was this shape. Okay, I also put holes in to make the pass through. So inside of this, there's a curved tube so that I can run a thin chain or a neck wire or something through it. In retrospect, I would have used a thicker, a wider tubing than I did. I made it sort of limited and narrow, but it was a little hard to scale to the wall size that I had. So I built the hollow form. I had my drill holes in. I expanded the drill holes and threaded through and then soldered in this and soldered this, the bezel setting into place. And that took me a couple shots. I did not, and I'm still not thrilled with the cleanness of the line, but I was convinced at 1 in the morning that I was going to melt everything and have nothing to show you for my final project. So I stopped where I did. So this is now soldered in along here. And it did take soldering from the front and the back. So I actually started by putting my big blobs of solder right at the wall. So I put large chunks of solder right where the two meet. If I'm looking at it sideways, here's my bezel setting and my wall comes up to here, right? So I put my solder, the dimensionality a little better. So the bezel is sticking out and I put my solder right here to get it to flow, to hold, and to get it to flow around the lip there. I then flipped the piece over and supported it on nickels and things like that and soldered from the back and had a pass where I had to resolder a little bit because I'd managed to get it it had lifted up on one edge. And so it wasn't perfectly flush with what I had. So it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And then did all of the final cleanup and so on. So it's not just negative space that you can build into a hollow form if you're doing cool shapes, it's space for the stones. It just takes a lot of planning. Those of you that have taken my hollow forms class know how much I talk about order of operations, and this one has a number of very critical order of operations to get the steps. that you
So
need.
question, Rachel,
Yeah.
so you have the step bezel, the
Yep.
bezel, and then the wall for the hollow form. So it's like 3 layers.
No, not quite. So the hang on a sec. Where's my pens? I put them away already. I did. So the start of it was the wall of the hollow form, right? And I independently have the bezel out here. And when I made a break point for the hollow form, I made it out of the same gauge that I made this wall. And I just built a U that it was going to fit into. I didn't need
Yeah.
to make a full frame for it, right?
So now draw in the step in that. So you have 3 layers.
Oh, I see what you're saying. There is, yes, there is a layer of the wall of the step bezel inside.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it's what the stone sits on. The wall, the red is the wall that the lip that raises up that we're going to fold over. Then there's the wall that is inset. I thought you were talking about this as a wall, and this wall goes away in favor of the frame wall that I made.
Yeah.
So yes, when we're here, it's wall, wall, step.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Whoosh.
Yeah, there's some heat challenges in getting these connected. That's one of the reasons that the soldering on this was as tricky as it was, because you got to heat without melting your top and bottom. So in my case, it's sterling along the bezel is sterling, the wall is sterling, the back is sterling, and only the top is fine silver because I knew I wanted to do some kimbu on the top of it. But again, I would go with a heavier gauge in the fine silver. I think I had 26 gauge or something like that, which was too thin. Okay, any other questions before we get to setting? Okay. Now comes the hopeful magic. All right, so first thing I'm doing is taking out some of these great bush finishing burrs that I've talked to you about how magical I think they are. And I'm gonna go with a mid-size one. It doesn't much matter because they're all straight walled. And that's sort of the key to this is I'm just trying to thin my upper lip a little bit here. And I need my burr life. I need my goggles because I've got to get in close for this. So in particular, I'm having a little bit of challenge in the corners. So I'm going to start there and work my way around. And it's just a little bit of I call this a carrot peeling motion. Because it's like you're scraping away with a carrot peeler or potato peeler. And it's a very gentle move. And I'm using the inner lip as my guide. So I'm not going below that point. I'm just running along it. And I'm going to do a first pass all the way around with a heavy emphasis in the corners. This is also a chance if you have any little escapee solder blobs and so on. It's a good way to get a little bit of the blobbing out of the way, which can tilt the way that your stone rests. All right, I'm going to do see if that was enough to get it a little looser in there. Yeah, my corners are still a little iffy, so I'm going to take a little bit more down.
Rachel, that bush burr is
Yep.
a Kraus burr?
It's a Bush is the company name.
Yeah.
It is, they call it a cylinder square finishing burr kit, which comes in a kit of 6 different pieces. The part number is 118.016 if you buy it from Auto Fry. And it has ranging from 0.9 millimeter up to 1.8 millimeter. I know they do others. These are redonkulously expensive and worth every penny. I got a set of each of their styles of finishing burrs. So they've got a finishing flame. They may have a finishing round and a finishing setting even. No, maybe not the setting. I don't know.
Can you hold that up to the screen so we can take a picture of it?
Sure. Is that enough or do you need more?
More.
More? Here, hang on. Let me zoom in. I can also put the part number in the chat in a moment. I think I only found the kits at Auto Fry. I know Bush is sold a lot of places, but like I didn't find them at Rio. And Bush is nice because I mean Auto Fry is nice because they put the individual part numbers if you want to order one of the set. But it's way cheaper to buy a set of them. The other set that I use fairly often is the flame burr, or it's also sometimes called a bud burr. We good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So once again, just using these to take out a little corner. Whoops, sorry. Say again. Did I miss somebody saying something? It's not. Okay.
No, I just was trying to mute myself and I didn't do it fast enough, but now I am.
All good. So again, my focus is any lumps and bumps, and it's just a very, very light touch scraping. And I find you can't go slow with these or else they'll skip. You have to do medium to high speed. The slower I go, the more likely I am to go sliding across something I didn't mean to. Do be careful because they are very fine bits, but they're very, very sharp. So they take material out quickly. So practice on something you don't care about because they're very different in how they behave than the equivalent shapes in a less finishing burr. Starting to get a little nervous about how thin I'm getting in one of the corners. So I'm going to pause there. Much looser. Good. Is it loose enough? That's the question. I'm resting at an angle a little bit, which means I'm still catching on something. It's a little tricky to see which part is catching. So another thing that may have happened to me that I got to check is I may have, in all the work I've been doing, may have sort of dinged up the sides of this. And so I got to take a pair of pliers and make sure I can straighten everything out. It's not that shaped plier though. Just make sure they're all upright. So I'm just doing a little squeeze at the corners to make sure they are as squared up as possible, and then ditto along the actual long and short walls. Just to make sure there's nothing keeping me from getting the stone in there. Sometimes that's all it takes is getting a little straightening in the walls. So, but it didn't get me to get a set that I want, but it did straighten it enough that I can see where it's catching. So let me see if I can zoom in enough to point this out to you all. Dude, too far. Okay, so what's happening here is that it's comfortably fitting in here and here and up to about here, and it's still okay here, but this corner and this corner still want to catch. So I can try to get, sometimes you can get it resolved by going into that corner first, which in this case, it's actually looking pretty good when I do that. I'm a little nervous that one side is resting a little lower than the other, and I don't want to force it because this is fragile at the corners. So I'm going to pause there long enough to, if I can get my stone back out now. Come on. Oh, so snug.
So Rachel, when you soldered it, do you think it changes the form? A
Yeah,
little
it's
bit?
possible. It's possible that the act of, it got warped because it softens and it anneals as I was doing things. So it could have gotten a
Mhm.
little bit distorted by the aggression of being soldered into that corner.
Because I remember you really worked hard on that and it
It
was
was,
perfect.
yeah, it's a snug fit, but this is going to happen with any setting. Any setting may have little adjustments at the end. Remember that we did some of this kind of drilling away on some of our other basket settings too. So this doesn't distress me that I have to do this. It's pretty standard fare.
Okay.
One of the things I'm going to do is on each actual corner, I'm going to put a little channel, not cutting all the way through, but I'm going to use the channel as the basis of what I'll saw down. And it's the catch point that's the biggest catch point. Meaning that's where I can see the stone getting stuck. So I'm giving it a little bit of extra room, and then we'll add in the ball burr exercise on top of that. So I'm just taking the corner and doing a little straight drill with the burr to give myself a bit more of a corner fold. Yeah. Oh, remember to go fast with these. Okay, I'm going to stop there and switch over to a ball burr, which I thought I pulled out, but maybe I did not. Hang on a sec. Let's see, where are my ball burrs? So this box that I got also at a junk store or an estate sale is an old school bush carrier. Somebody at some point in their career had this full of bush burrs, which makes me incredibly envious. These are not all bush burrs.
Cool.
Get a decently small Little ball burr. Okay, so this time, again, a little bit of burr life. I'm gonna do it at the corners, same as we would for if we were doing a trillion or a square. I'm just drilling in a little bit, and when I'm doing corners, this is okay to get down into the lip of the step. Because we're really trying to make just an air gap for those corners.
But you're doing 2 of them.
I'm doing both corners, yeah, each point, so 8 in total. Making sure we don't go through the other side. Just doing a couple passes to try and get them sort of equal to one another. All right, let's see how that goes. Yeah, I'm still a little off kilter. I can't quite see where. Oh, come on. Every time it's this snug, it makes me nervous. I don't know how it can feel like it's tighter than it was when I started all of that cleanup, but it does. So I'm going to see about actually widening out on the outside. So all I'm doing is tilting this outer this outer wall a little bit, because what I'm feeling is that it's not catching well side to side because of the way the corners are hitting. That makes sense, but yeah, it's closer. It's still catching. One little spot up at this top leftmost, upper left corner. It's giving me the most grief. Okay, so that is looking happier. I'm going to zoom in for you guys, because now we have one more prep step that we have to do. Oop, come back here. All right, so we've got a fairly level setting on the lip fit in there. And I could go ahead and set it as is, except that it's a very high lip right now, which means it's going to cover more of this cool cut of the stone than I want. So the trick, as we've seen in other sessions that we've done, is to take one of the thin Sharpie markers and at about a 45-degree angle, follow the line of your stone and mark out along the bezel wall. And that's the maximum you want to trim away to have it still hold the stone. So let me carefully just back out and show you that there's a fair amount, so about a 1/2 millimeter that I could take away all the way around this setting. So I'm going to do that very carefully because it's now part of a larger piece. I would have been smart to have done all of that beforehand, but I couldn't do all the trimming and finishing on screen if I'd done that before I was ready to set it. So I'm going to go good old fashioned sandpaper since it's a fairly consistent level. And we're going to be here for a little bit. Oop, zoom back out. Not that it's terribly exciting to watch me sand, but I got to give you a little bit of boredom during the final session.
And that's gonna add a lip.
Close. So I'm just holding it in at slightly different angles, depending on where I'm seeing the excess material. So the back side got down to the level I wanted a little faster than the front side. I need to take a little bit more off the upper corner. I'm just pushing more in that angle than the rest when I'm trying to focus the sanding. Okay. I don't want to go any further than that because I don't want to risk it. And here's one of the things that I always try to shortcut and never should. When you have sanded or filed, there's a little lip of material caught inside your piece. And I have cracked stones because I failed to take that little bit off, right? So I got to get that sort of tiny fingernails worth of catch. Thankfully, I have a bit for that. I'm going to switch back to that barrel burr. Put the barrel burr back. I did, but maybe I did. There it is.
But doesn't a bit take away a lot?
So not if you're gentle with it, if you're light touch, it's just going to sort of scrape the surface. And because the lip is higher, right, you know, there's more material right at the top. I'm just going to do a quick pass. And it's just brushing off that last little bit. If you've done a thick walled bezel, you might also want to have prepped enough to have removed the out a little bit, you know, thin down the outer side as well. And in this case, I'm going to actually just take a file to the outer lip because that lip isn't just on the inside. It's just going to really make it awful and ugly if I try and use a burr to take it off of the outside lip. I won't see that part when I'm set, so I'm less concerned. I'm just going along each and taking down a little bit of that lip.
Is that a number 4?
The file?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, these are my antique files, so the numbering system is kind of
Okay,
Correct.
well,
it's a 2 in antique, which means it's double the equivalent modern day file probably. I'm going to be doing touch up sanding and polishing to the edge once I set it, no matter what. So I'm not too worried if I'm just doing it right along the very top. Whatever file you have will do the trick. So I'm just making sure I have no catch points. Looking good. Promise I'm not doing all these steps just to procrastinate on this final setting. Something is now catching again, which means I may not have gotten all the little burrs down. Or while I was doing it, I managed to push something in that I didn't mean to. All that sanding. I have done a little mangling of my corners. Again, a lot of this is just the squeeze. Oh, there's a little bit of lip there still. That's part of it. When you see me pinching to straighten, it's really very limited there's no real bend in that unless I intend to try and pull it outward. It's really more of a straight up and down squeeze when I do that to try and get it upright if it has gotten any distortion to it.
Are you going to heat it up again?
No,
So you don't think it's work hardened by now?
from the little bit of sanding that I've done
Yeah.
or from the pinching.
Yeah.
No, not particularly, because I'm feeling that I can still move it around.
Okay.
And I'm also going to be doing a lot of my setting using my my hammer handpiece.
Okay.
Um,
I need to look at like the bits. I bought a hammer handpiece and it just seems like when I use it, it just dings my work, even though I've polished the ends.
yeah. Are you using it with a traditional Fordham or with an actual hammer tool? Meaning, does it
I have
stop when you stop pushing?
No, I have a Fordham and then I have the regulator where it goes up or down.
It does, okay.
eventually.
Yeah, I mean, all of them are, so it depends on which bit you're using. When I pull out mine, I'll show you some of the bits that I prefer and how I've modified them.
Cool.
Okay, so now we got a much closer fit along there than we did a moment ago. So it's going to be very limited amount of material going over each edge of the piece. Now I have to remember, because I'm doing all this fancy work, I don't want all those black lines that are left over. So I'm just going to go in with a little bit of rubbing alcohol and clean out the inside. I might also do a little bit of polishing if I had the time, because it'll be harder to get to polish. And so there's some kind of marked up stuff along here, but we're going to go and do it anyhow. And my coulette on this one is just barely pushing against the back of it. It's a slightly shorter than it should have been bezel. So I can feel it, but it doesn't really push down. But that means is if I'm putting any pressure on it, I'm going to put the hole of my bench pin underneath it in case I push too hard. It's that close to being in danger. And I'm going to get my set back. Resting down? I can't quite tell. No, I'm not resting down yet.
Are you going to file the corners like page 73 or no?
We are going to, as we get to the sawing and pushing layer. But the thing on that page is, what you see, he's got two different versions for you to do.
Yeah.
So you can do, I'm going to do the, I mean, let me back up. He's got two versions of how to set corners. One is the saw down and fold over method, and the other is to file the corners down to give that curved look. I'm not doing the curved look version. I'm not doing that level of filing. The filing that I'll do is relative to once we're doing all the fold overs and the saw downs, there's a little bit of touch up filing to do to the corners. What Carmen is referring to is he gives us on page 74 on the upper right, he shows the version where instead of doing the saw down cornering, you pre-file your corners into a curve, so there's not much material at the corners holding things down. I don't know that that would look great on a setting like this. It's really better for the corners of the squares and rectangles. So I think it's time to get to it. Where is my favorite setting tool? Dun, dun, dun. So I'm going to start with my long edges, and I have to be careful not to put too much pressure on the actual hollow form. So I'm just going to start with, not when it pops up though. I'm not, hang on. I don't want it popping up from there. Might have to do this all with the hammer set. Going to be tricky with the handheld. Guys, I'm going to have to do almost all of this with the power tools, I think. I think I used 22 gauge for this, for these walls. And the fact that it's soldered into the hollow form makes it much more structurally bound, I guess I would say, meaning this side in particular is going to be super tricky to get the, there's a part of what we're doing is we're using the fulcrum effect as we push. And I think it's going to be a lot harder to get that inside one. This is the point at which we remind ourselves that it gets ugly before it gets beautiful. And that's okay. Goodness, guys. That's the inside wall. Okay, I'm going to pause and zoom in and show you guys the layer so far. So you can see I'm working the long edges and the short edges, but not yet the corners. And I'm going to pull out the hammer hand piece because I really want to get these the short sides are doing well by hand, but the long sides are fighting me. So let me grab that. And I have what my hammer tool is the old school Fordham micromotor. Excuse me, they've since come out with, I think, 2 different generations after this one, but I purposefully went hunting for this specific model because Mike Zagluski told me how durable it was. Pull it out so you guys can actually see it. So if you ever happen across one of these in a used tool store, they're workhorses. It's the the original style of Fordham micromotor. And it's a very simple box that does a lot. And you do want to get Fordham hand pieces to go with your Fordham if you're buying this type. I've made the mistake of trying to buy a competitor's model that does go with it, but it overheats like crazy and just doesn't do well for it. So then the next thing is the tool tips. This is my favorite of the tool tips. I'll zoom in so you can see that one. And there's a set of these that you can get different shapes, including a point tool and round one, a couple different round sizes, and then a few different variations on the rectangle, which is my personal favorite. They were designed by that with Fordham, working with Wayne. Oh gosh, what is Wayne's last name? The goldsmith out of Atlanta, I think. If anybody remembers his name. And he designed them based on what he wanted out of the settings, and then they are clearly meant to be modified. They come sharp, and so just like our other setting tools, we want to blunt the edges and burnish them down. And then, so all I've done is taken a little bit off the corners and a little bit around the edge and then polished it up. And so the reason I like this one is that it gives you both the rocking motion this way and this way. And it gives you the upright push, which we're going to use a lot of on this stone. And the micromotor itself. So they also sell hammer hand pieces that work with your flex shaft. But the difference in using a micromotor with your hammer hand piece is that it goes, oops, I got to use the right foot pedal for it at least. It goes without actually going. So it's not actually pushing until you push down on it. Okay. And so that gives you more control than the one that is just based on your regular Fordham. This one has both a foot pedal option and a manual option, and different speeds, and you can do forward and reverse. I'm just set in forward on sort of a mid-range speed for when I'm using this. More delicate stones, I would go with a slower speed. I still in mute. I am. You guys can see me. All right, so gotta be down lower in my seat or I can't reach this pedal.
And we can't hear the
Oh, really?
jackhammer.
It sounds really loud to me.
Yeah, doesn't come through.
I wonder if my main mic just takes background, it takes it as a background noise and tries to erase it. This is one of those tools that is super spendy, but for me, sometimes losing hand strength and agility, it's like having a power rolling mill. You know, it's just one of those things that will make your life better. I don't use it often, but when I use it, I need it. Okay, so just that little bit, and you can see how much further we are to fully set. And now it's actually time to start working on those corners, I think. So I'm going to do a first pass of pushing down for each corner. And then but I'm not going to go as far down as I have all the way around so far. And then I'm going to do some of that careful sawing that John describes. And so we don't want to push those corners too fast, too far. I need just enough to see where my cut points are going to go. Getting real ugly before it gets pretty. Okay, and now I'm gonna pull out my saw and the finest saw blade I have in my kit, which in this case, I don't think I have an 8/0, I think I have a 7/0. Yep, I've got 7/0. I'd like to say my hair is as thick as this saw blade is, but I am not sure it is. It's sort of a tie, like sort of a toss up. Tiny little saw blade. And the reason that we use the finest one is so that we have nominal gapping, because the whole premise of this technique, which is going to be a little tricky to position, you can still see me. The whole premise of this technique is really that we're making a gap that we're then burnishing over as we push down the material. And so I'm doing careful, tiny little strokes. Stay in line with my corner. And then we'll do a little pushing down. Then, oop, too far. I, my chair is too wheelie, so I'm pushing away from the bench as I try to put my saw blade in. Now comes the trick of, can I get to those little ones there? That's going to be really hard. I don't know if I can. I might have to do a separating disc. Wendy, you were right. Those are going to be impossible. I might have to do a filing and instead of a sawing, filing and cornering. Long foot pedal. I need a switcher so I can just have one pedal for the two devices. That would be fantastic. So what I'm going to show you is that little bit of cutting allowed me to push the center between the two cuts in further. Got to go a little further than I did on this one. And then I'm going to be able to do a little pushover and file and pushover and file. So the other side, push over. I'm going to see if I can zoom in enough for you guys to see what it looks like.
What are the approximate dimensions of that amethyst?
I can give you more than approximate. And it's ametrine, not just
Ametrine. You're right. Sorry.
I have batteries left in my device, which apparently I need to swap that battery. So let's take two. Approximately 21 by 16.5 millimeters. It's good size. There's another one of those, what will people see on screen? Oh, that's what I was going to do. I was going to show you the fold over. Bear with me while I zoom in a little further. Too close. Come on. There we go. So I'm hoping you guys can see that fold over as opposed to before I've folded it over. This is where I've made the cuts in
It
each
worked.
corner. Say again?
It worked.
It works, yeah. I mean, it's going to be, we got a few more layers of pushing and cutting and pushing and cutting, but you can see that it starts to fold over on this corner so that it becomes invisible by the time we're done. We're going to do a little bit more pushover and we're going to figure out how to get those other corners with a file instead of a saw. Trying to think about any other techniques that are going to get me there. I think I'm going to actually use my pinchy technique that I've shown you guys on the corners that I can't file. So that's taking a pair of flat pliers and just pinching across the lift to squeeze them closed. And then that gives me something to file down. So these are the ones that I'm doing with the saw. And these are the ones that I'm doing. Oop, come back in screen, Rachel. Where am I going? There we go. So these are just pinched at the back corner. And you got to have a fairly firm pinch to give yourself closed together material that we're then able to file down a little bit. And then we'll be able to use the hand piece again to push that now thinned metal down. So delicate, delicate little filing job on each of those pinched corners just to take the pinch material off. It behaves in a similar manner to the sawing technique. It's just a little more clunky to get you there. When you can do the sawing technique on this fine of a corner, it's probably a little better to do so. You get a little more precision when you're cornering. Okay, now we're going to go back in. Zoom out a little bit more. Back in with the hammer hand piece. Oh, wrong foot pedal. My goodness. This is where I personally get really nervous, is doing these corners, because that's the most likely to chip. And I'm going to go back and do a little further push down along the walls. And Carmen, you were asking about the bumpy marks that yours makes. Part of it is that they're all going to cut in a little bit. I usually do this pass where I'm pushing down and sliding as I go,
Mm-hmm.
very, very slowly, which evens it out a little bit. But I do it towards.
I can't hear you, Rachel.
Oh, there's too much clunking. I said I do this at pass where I'm not just picking it up and moving it to each point that I'm pushing, but I do a slide along while letting it go thump, 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 thump. And that starts to smooth out some of the bumpy factor. Nothing's going to take care of it all until you actually file and polish things down. But you'll see me doing two different actions. One that's a single spot push and hammer, and the other that's a sort of a drawing it along slowly. So for these passes, as I get closer and closer to the end, I'm just controlling it by supporting the hammer hand piece a little bit with my finger. Helps me with the pacing of it. I'm gonna actually do the pinch a little bit more than the on the corners here too, just because the sawing is a little tight in there. I'm getting very close to the end. The trick on the sawing and filing is to file just a few strokes and keep an eye on things. If you see it starting to look like it's getting a gap, then you're going too far with your filing. You need to pause, squish it together, pause, squish it together. So I'm getting close enough that I'm just trying to do leveling, evening of the corners. Oop, scratch the stone. I'm just taking down material enough to make them start to square back up. And I can see that I got a couple spots I really got to push down further. Problem is that I can't see out of this old pair of goggles. Let me see if this pair is better. I'm down to finishing my push over. I'm just finding a couple spots where I'm not consistent with how far I push down the stone. I'm trying to clean those up a little bit. The stone is well held at this point. There's just a lot of inconsistency to how it hits the stone. What I'm checking for is whether I can get fingernails under the gaps, and there's still a little bit at my corners that I want to push down, which means I need to thin the material further in order to do so. Because that's where I'm folding together 2 layers of material. So by thinning it, I give myself that chance to push it further down. The toughest stuff is on the far side, of course. It's hard to access. So looking at this particular project's use of this setting, if I were to do it not on screen, not trying to show you guys the setting portions itself, I think looking back, I would probably have done all of that trim down and prep work before soldering it into the larger piece, because this is hard to access. So if I had it well trimmed and possibly a little bit of sawing and or filing of the corners, it would have been a little easier. Just I'm getting a little bit of marking up when my filing is hitting down below. Yeah. A little bit more push at each corner. Now that it is thinner. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there because otherwise I'm going to be very nervous that I'm over pushing. Get that a little rinsed off. Hang on a sec. So that is where I've got it set to. And next up is going to be finishing up the edges more cleanly. I am not going to take a I'm not gonna bright cut, but I am going to use one of my favorite, the Mizzy wheels that I've told you guys about in the past. Let's see if I got the existing Mizzies. And all of this part of it, I would take a lot longer than on screen is going to show. So I'm just going to give you the basics so that we can start to see it cleaned up. The Mizzies I really love when you're having to do a cut-in corner because it blurs the line really nicely if there's any line left over.
I thought your favorite was the Swifty. That's not a
Swifty,
Swifty.
I called it a Mizzy. Sorry, Mizzy is the grinding wheel that I use, and Swifty is the rubberized. Thank you for that. Yes, the Swifty wheels, these rubberized ones. These are Mizzy wheels, and these are Swifty wheels. I'm using the Swifty. Mizzy is for grinding. And the Mizzy wheels will generally take care of that chatter that comes from using the hammer handpiece. Okay, I'm gonna go quickly run to the sink and clean this of its gunk that it's now got in it so that I can show you guys what it's looking like. Be right back. Come on, focus. Not so much, too shiny for it to focus on. There we go. All right, so again, a lot more time with sanding and filing and Mizzy wheel to get it really cleaned up. And I will bright cut this one at some point. I just think I'll probably cut myself. I'm so tired at this point. But bright cutting, it'll just make sure that all of the little bits and, you know, there's some sort of it's not very straight along this line going to this line. So I'm going to probably get a little bright cut in there just to clean up those edges. And it takes care.
And what graver do you think you would use? The 41?
Flat graver. John talks about it in maybe even in this chapter that we're on for this. So just running it along. So it's running along this way in each cut so that you're getting a counterbalance to the surface that you've got on the outside. So I would do the rest of my polishing up, getting rid of all the last of these marks. So what I'd probably do is go in with a file a little bit more, and get the last of the heavy marks on it, then go back at it with the Mizzy to clean up whatever's left from that. There's a little bit of chaff there, that kind of thing. And then I'll go through and take the graver as that final step to really bling it up. And that is our emerald cut step bezel, project number 7,563 in the John Cogswell book. Dun, dun.
Yay!
You did it, Rachel.
Yes, indeed.
Very nice.
That one needed to be on an actual piece, that setting, after all that effort. I did not see people poking things at me. Carbon paper before setting. So Deborah, so you're resting carbon. This is Deborah's been pinging things about
Well,
putting carbon
what I
paper
meant
in.
was, when you couldn't find which side of the stone was not laying flat, I've used that before to find it. Because
So
when you set the stone on the carbon paper, it marks it on the metal.
so
where it
are you
touches.
sandwiching it, or are you putting it
Well,
carbon paper
Well,
back?
you kind of push a piece of carbon paper on the base of your, your piece, the setting, and then
Cool.
you're putting your stone in it, and it usually touches right where it's too high
So does the mark show up on the stone or on the
on the metal.
on the metal? So you're putting carbon side down.
Correct.
I gotta say, I don't know if I even know where you can buy carbon paper these days. Is
Oh,
it
somebody's got an old stash. Look for somebody old.
Just
I
check,
keep it for that purpose.
yeah.
check the
That's
sewing
cool.
sites. That's called transfer paper.
Right.
Oh,
right.
sure. Yeah, transfer paper might work. Yeah, it's a little heavier when it's for sewing, isn't it? Because it's that sort of fiber weight. Yeah, that's a good idea. And then Cynthia was just saying goodbye. So that's all, folks. What do we got? What do you want to talk about? Any questions on that one?
I want to look at your board.
Board, okay. I gotta clear a few tools in order to make room for that. Yeah, we have the last two to put on the board. I am excited. Get the burrs out of the way. Jeez.
Got my wine.
You got your wine? I meant to get myself a tiny bottle of champagne, but my schedule is so screwed from being on that later flight. Like it had ripple effect to the project I was working on. And so I haven't even got real food in the house right now. After this, I'm going food shopping.
Oh no, that's awful.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind. I'm looking forward to some time off soon.
How did your
Don't forget to
workshop
send
go?
So that was not for a workshop. That was a combination of the day job and visiting family, because I hate traveling at holidays. So I try to travel between the holidays. So this was my go east to see my mom and my sister and some friends along the way. And whenever I do that, it always means a whirlwind tour for me. I ate more meals out with people than I've had in probably the past 3 months prior. But I had some great food. So I had some good Brazilian food in Connecticut, and I had some Thai food from one of my favorite Thai places. And the only bummer was I usually also try to go see my chiropractor back there. She's so good that I go flying back by way of her area so that I can get chiropractic from her. But she was having hand surgery, so she wasn't able to do any work. I'm hoping that the hand surgery was successful because she's amazing. So yeah, it was just a whirlwind tour, but also I was continuing to have to do all my day job work. And we had a project deadline that the presentation for it went very, very well, despite how tired I was when I got back. All right, the board, the magic board. Oops, I gotta zoom out for this to start. Magic board. And we are going to first put the card slotted faceted stone in place. Dun, dun, dun. And
Wow, Rachel.
yeah, emerald cut. Dun, dun, dun. Boom. We have a board.
Wow, wow, wow.
So there's still definitely some that I'll need to do a little play around with. I need to redo my triangular basket setting or trillion basket setting because I'm not pleased with that sample. But there's a lot of fun stuff on here. And I thank you guys for sticking with me through the journey. And to John for the book that inspired it all, because you know, as I said when I started this series, I took his class in stone setting. It was not the first class I took with him, but I took it once he finally had it in his sequence of classes because he got bored of it and didn't teach it as often towards the later teaching years. And we learned 4 or 5 of the things from the book when we did that, but we did not learn 58 or whatever is on here. Different settings. And so the exercise of actually going through like each shape has a different approach that you need to take. And so it is a really, really useful exercise to need to do each one and think about how they're different from the ones in its family of settings. And this was a super useful exercise for me. I think my own practice is improved and continues to improve as a result of it. Yeah. So anything you want to see up close again? Do we need to do the close-up camera pass like we did before now that it's complete? Or
Yes.
is- Yes,
Yeah,
please.
that would be nice.
Okay, it's gonna be wobbly for a minute while I switch that camera out. Tables where I can actually show you guys things. Zoom in. Starting up in chapter 3 with our step bezels that we did 2 different ways. We did the building from the outside. Sorry, the step bezels. So first we started with just the straight wall bezels, and then we moved to the step bezels. We did a bunch of different shapes. We did a couple of different toppers on those triangle ones because we wanted to play around with his 2 methods of doing cornering. And then we did step bezels for some of the faceted stones.
Don't go too fast.
Don't go so
Thank you.
fast.
Slow down.
So we did the toppers. That's showing the 2 different cuts for the corners that we were just talking about when Carmen, you were asking about it. And you can see how it makes sense on a crisp squared corner. It's a little fuzzier if you do that on an emerald cut, I think. So I'm not sure I'd ever do those curved downs on the emerald cuts. And then step bezels, where we went into the faceted settings in addition to some of the more challenging shapes. Here we've got the triangle and trillion settings. And if you remember, we did 2 different approaches to those. We were doing where you built the walls in flat sheet and soldered them together and then used them as step wire, basically. And the version where we built the outside and then the inside, which is my personal preference. I find I have more success with that, but your mileage may vary. We had some of the challenges of using the pair corners or the marquee corners where you have to get them fairly precise. And
Rachel, go back to the peridot.
go back to the pair.
There you go. Okay,
Question. Yeah, I think that's actually a lemon quartz.
okay.
It does look very green on camera though. And then we did marquee, both faceted and cabbed. And we have an example, although I don't know whether I used the stone for something else or I managed to lose it. I thought this was a rose sapphire that I used for this. But that's using the same technique as we did in these 2, but using the extra filing and fancification to trim it down and make it look way more complex than it is. So he has some drawings of that, but he didn't really go into much description of it. It's one of the things he does teach in his classes. Square faceted setting, which was a big challenge. This one that was my nemesis that we just finished, the emerald setting that we did a couple different ways. And finally, I gave up on John's approach and used what I was accustomed to. Then we go on to continuing with the irregular bezels. So that was what we do when we're doing a rock of some sort, modifying a hybrid prong and step bezel. And then we started in on our tube settings. So we did some where we were just drilling into heavy wall tubing, or we were nesting different tubing. So they come out to the same effect, but they end up being multiple steps in one case. I personally still, on these, I'm sort of equal about it, except that I like the nested tubing one because you can also do square, right? So if you have nested square tubing, you can make a step bezel pretty easily. This is where we got into some of the more challenging ones, and these probably merit a little more attention from me to practice a little bit more. The double bezel, where we're using the bullets in this case, and there's a center wire inside between them as what the bezel is sitting on. And then you're pushing down around it. All of the bullet shapes were challenging to set, some of them requiring glue at his recommendation. And some of them not even set yet because they're so challenging. But these little acorn caps, I think, are super cute for the ends of earrings. I'm gonna go up and over on that one so you guys can see it. And we had just a few different versions of that, whether it was a wall or a ring. The ring was a little more successful. And in all of those, my takeaway is that I was not making nearly a tall enough dome for the real setting of those. It needed more material. Then we did the tongue setting, which is another challenging one. And this is also a good one to maybe put a drop or two of the epoxy in, depending on the steepness of your tongue, because it's hard to get tall enough without taking away too much of the stone. So we did two different versions, the fully capped and then the little domed cap that has a bit more curvature to it. And then we went on to the conical settings, which had to be castellated in some way. So we did two different variations on the castellation because those walls are so steep that in order to push them, there's no room to push the material down around the cone, which is why we have to cut away some of it. This one I had gotten set, but it wasn't set well enough, so it came apart. This is the one where we set from behind and put a cap over it and then use the cap as if it were a bezel. So I needed a little more height on that one too, in order to properly cap it off. And then this fun one from behind as well. I don't know if I can see it. Let me see, that one might need picking up in order to show it. Got my hands full with camera equipment, so bear with me. So this is where we set it from the back and pushed over the jump ring to hold the stone in place, pushed upward through the setting. This was the little device that we made in order to, oops, that belongs with the next one down. Sorry, first we get to the teardrop brioette, where we built a little sort of pixie hat for it. And that was one where it was a drilled bead. So there's a post inside of it that we're holding it down. Here was another one of those modified shoulder bezels where we just made it fancier using a step bezel as the basis for it. Then we went on to chapter 4 for our prong settings, where we started with crown settings in here. So this was our plain crown setting, and then our slightly fancier crown setting. Oop, not in the right spot. Crown setting, and then a fancier crown setting where we cut off the bottom, did some filing detail and soldered it back on. Then we moved on to our prong setting or basket settings. And we played around a little bit on those with different prong types. I don't know if it's going to show. Well, I'm not in the right spot for you guys. There we go.
Yeah, show the printing.
Show the printing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep. So we went and played around with the prongs a little bit. We did some 4 prongs, standard ones. We played around with 3 prongs. We did some of the itty bitty little ones. And we showed how you can just build it onto a piece of metal so that you can do the work when there's that small. We did some of the pear and marquee settings where in addition to wire prongs, we're also working with sheet prongs. So that gives you that kind of an effect on the top that we got. And we did similar sheet cornering for the cushion cut square over there.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, I like that cushion. I like it as a cushion cut, and I like that prong. And then we did the triangle basket, which is one that I want to redo. The emerald basket, that one gave me as much challenge, not quite as much challenge as the step bezel emerald, but that was again playing around with different ways to shape the prongs. We did our slotted cut card
Mhm.
with the cabochons, both a bullet and a cab. I think I did the cab on screen and the bullet I played around with for my own sake. We just finished setting that slotted card for the faceted. Then we had those little tools that we made. John's version of it doesn't have the little tube, but I found having the tube helped me keep the wires straight when I was making long runs. So this is a bunch of them that we make as a set. Then we did a tiny little setting for square wire. That was a
That
fun
is
one.
Frito.
Then we went on to our graver settings. And so we did stitch setting. And this was an example from another stitch setting I'd done to try and sort of see what the maximum you could. This is way bigger than John recommends you do stitch setting for. And this was a combination of a bead setting example over here, our flush sets here, star setting, another variation on the bead setting. And then we went on to the gypsy and flush mount settings. So we did that cast ring and then set the Roman style. So this was cast, we carved it during the course of the sessions. You can see the side patterns on there and so on, a little bit of vine work or whatever I'd done. And then setting it down in with, this is a true flush setting, a true Roman setting. Then we went on to false channel settings. Let me get the angle right on that one. It's gonna do. So this was using the squares and we put them into the little channel.
Mhm.
Right? What's called a false flush set. Here's another one showing an emerald, a single emerald cut stone with a little bit of extra detail on the side. Then we did pearl settings, all of which look the same by the time they're done, but they each were done differently. So we did a cup set where we just had a little curved disc and a post that we set it into. Peg set, which is a straight up peg. And then this final one was that split wedge post where it's similar start to this one, but we cut down the middle of it and put a tiny sliver of metal in there. And this is the one that ain't coming out no matter what we do. So that was the settings for the book. And then I also had some of the various fancy versions from when I was doing my classes. Oop, too high. So you can see the different extra fancy step and variations thereof that you can get to.
Slow down.
Oh, sorry. Those weren't part of the book, so I was winging by them.
There's,
So these
Yeah.
are all based on step bezel technology.
Mhm.
They're just variations on the theme based on what you're cutting away or what you're adding decoratively. And then that's our whole board.
Amazing. Amazing.
Very
Yeah,
amazing.
a lot of setting.
Bravo.
I'm gonna switch over to the other camera and put this back so I'm not wobbling around while you guys are on screen. So that is a heck of a new, full education on majority of the commonly used and some not so commonly used settings out there in the world. And I don't know that I've seen any books with quite so much in them as John's. There are definitely some other books worth picking up if you want to continue your journey. I think my next most used is Anastasia Young's book on stone setting. And I really love her language use. She's so, I don't want to say basic in a negative term. She's so simplified in how she words everything that it's really straightforward to read through what she's describing. She does not do quite as much of the don't do this stuff as John does. That's what I love about John, is he gives you reasons to do something and reasons not to do something.
Mhm.
But does anybody else have any other books that they use on the regular for their stone setting work? Anything that you've dug into? No? Okay. Anybody have show and tell for me? Or are we doing a toast to the end of the project? What are we doing?
Toast.
Ideas? Toast? And I'm bringing my iced tea to the table because I didn't get that champagne I meant to. Thank you,
Yeah.
folks, for traveling along with me on this journey. Cheers.
Cheers.
And
you.
to
It's
a,
been
to a happier,
amazing.
healthier 2024 for all of us.
Yes.
Yep.
It's been a wonderful journey for me. And it's been
Good.
wonderful sharing it with everybody else, and all your generosity has been amazing. Thank you.
Yay.
So what's everybody else working on in their studios? What have you got? Oops, you're on mute, Wendy.
I wrapped all mine and then I thought about, oh, I should have had that for show and tell.
So you've been doing a lot of presents for people, or a lot
Well,
of things?
As I tell you, my daughter's a fourth grade teacher, and so they do a lot of California history and a lot of the mining. And yeah, so she got a little out of Nevada, got a little charm that had a little miner mining a pan of gold. So what I took is a big yellow quartz and I prong set it at the end of it. And wow, because it was such an unusual shaped stone, the prong setting, I kept thinking of Rachel, your patience. You are the queen of patience. And I must have done it 5 or 6 times. And I would have never have done that before our journey, Rachel. So here's to you for that.
What were there ones that were so close, but you weren't happy with it, kind of thing? Or was it radical failures at some point? What was the evolution that made you do it that many times over again until you were happy with it?
Well, the stone was set. I put it on a ring and then I set the prongs, but the prongs bent when the first one. So they were bent cockeyed. So I couldn't bend them over without. And then because I used easy solder, they broke off.
Mm.
So
Okay.
I had to start all over that. And, do you put it in a honeycomb block? Then I dug out a charcoal block and then I put it in pumice, which, so I finally did plaster of Paris.
Okay.
So I took the mold, I made a Play-Doh mold, put my little prongs and my setting in the mold,
Yeah.
poured the plaster on top of it, and then turned it over and soldered it.
Nice. I've never tried that technique. I know I've seen a lot more videos of people doing it,
Yeah.
but I just
Yeah.
haven't ever bought the plaster to try it because it's messy, frankly.
It was.
So
Right.
at any point, did you use John's modified tweezers in the process, or was it really that you were going with the other structural, you needed something that had more support?
You know what? I didn't think of John's modified tweezers, and I have them. I mean, that's half the battle, is me remembering half the stuff, right? Because there are a number of different ways to do that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I tried most of them. So no, I didn't.
Well, but it sounds like you figured out what your core issues were and then found the tools you needed to tackle them, which is great.
Yeah.
That alone is 2/3 of the battle, is getting it where you need it to be. But yeah, I have prongs go wonky on me all the time. It drives me bonkers. Or especially you get solder flow or bubbling along one corner. Like, that's what I don't like about the Trillium that I've got on there, is it got really sloppy because of how much heat I had to put on it to get all 9 or whatever it was, 6 prongs. So yeah, you saw how many times I redid things.
Yeah.
Keep trying. That's awesome. What was the unusual shape? Was it an abstract or was it a?
It was a piece of quartz, so it had the 6, the points coming together, and I was trying to make it look like a big piece of chunky gold, hanging from it.
Cool.
And then I'd also, in that little tiny pan, that little miner, I soldered some gold granules in there.
Nice.
So,
Oh, neat. So you
but the
really
shape is
charm.
what?
really modified the charm. You made it a whole new piece of art, which is cool.
Yeah.
Mm.
All this for, the classroom.
Wow.
Cool.
But I
Okay,
think so.
appreciate it.
Super exciting. You were willing to try to do that on somebody else's charm, because I would have been nervous that they made it out of, mediocre solder or whatever, and that I would ruin it.
Absolutely. I was concerned with that. Yeah. So it makes me want to go unwrap it.
Good. Does anybody else have something that they're working on that they want to talk about or share?
I have something, but I don't know. Can you see me?
Yep, hang on. I'm going to open. If you're showing stuff off, I'm going to spotlight you. Go for it.
Okay. Well, I have a couple commission pieces with Bumblebee.
Ooh.
Oh,
Oh, how elegant. Oh, I love that.
pretty.
Oh. Wow. Can we see the back?
So, yeah, the back, I kind of put this to it.
Cool. Ooh, what a fun setting.
Wow.
Very nice.
And here's the other one.
Oh, wow.
Very
Nice.
Very
So
nice.
I guess in India, when you get married, so that's the back.
Yeah.
They
Pretty.
have a tradition where they put cumin on their bodies.
Okay.
Have you ever
Who?
heard of that?
Cumin?
Oh,
The
yeah.
spice. Yeah.
So
It's like a henna.
yeah, I guess. And so it's for the bride, for the transition.
Huh.
She wants to put it on. So she liked that color. She picked the stones.
Nice.
Pretty.
I especially like the zigzag on the first one. That's got
Thanks.
really elegant movement to it.
Thank you.
Neat.
And then one more.
Oh, one more. Okay, sorry. I unspotlit too soon. Ooh.
This is a fossil that a friend wanted me to make something, and I actually messed up the bottom, but my partner, she does restoration, so she fixed it because it was fragile, and I'm just giving it simple. But I'm
Cool.
working with
Pretty.
bronze. It's
Yeah.
giant. Isn't it
You're not
giant?
Very nice.
You're working with a lot
Pretty.
of prongs. That's
Huh?
fantastic. That's
That's
a lot of
pretty.
prongs on the piece. Cool. Okay, Wendy's ready to show hers. Let's see.
It's not coming out very well.
Oh,
Step back a little bit from the camera and it'll be better. There we go. Okay. So the miner's up at the top. Is that what?
Yeah.
He's a
Super
Little
cool.
Why
guy.
don't I feel great coming after you, Carmen?
Oh, that's fantastic. Can you show us the miner basket with the little gold bits in it? Can you point us at that? There we go. Oh, cool.
oh, okay, nice.
very cute. That's nice.
And the
Just
back?
in the back of the basket. So
Yeah.
here's where it kept falling apart and getting wonky, and
So
It's
that's not
hard.
amazing
And
with how
it's
challenging of a shape your back piece is that you had so much trouble with it, because that's a really, really finicky little position to get your
Yeah.
prongs. It. Fantastic.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Cool
it's for
looking.
fourth grade, okay?
Oh,
It didn't have to
love
be
it.
like Carmen's.
Love it.
Nice
And
job, Carmen.
your daughter is going to wear it for school, is what you're saying?
Yes, and only for school, I'm sure.
Okay. But did she have some lessons for the kids around the mining process?
Oh yeah, it's Eureka, it's Fort Sutter, it's finding the gold, it's
Mhm,
it's how California became a state. Yeah.
mhm.
So
I was in Massachusetts for much of from 6th grade through high school. And one of the things they did there was bring us out to New York for our field trips for the Herkimer diamond mines, which aren't that
yes,
all,
yes,
but
course.
we get to go into the caves. I don't think we actually got to do any panning or cutting for anything, but it was exciting to go walking in the caves and pull out.
Yeah.
Herkimer stones.
Cool. That's on my bucket list. That in Arkansas,
What's in Arkansas that you want to see?
the diamonds.
Oh, I didn't know Arkansas was a big diamond place.
Yeah.
Did I tell you though that Tennessee is the heart of a lot of the Chinese pearl market?
Oh, yeah.
Is it?
It's
You
got
see?
it's apparently got exactly the right mud for seeding the pearls. And so
And-
they do seeding in the Tennessee flats, and then they ship the seeded oysters over to China for finishing and growing the rest of the pearls. And the way that I discovered that was when I was taking a trip across to Oklahoma as part of, I did for my 40th birthday, I traveled my whole life over again. I think I probably have mentioned that in the course of Think sessions here. And one of the trips had me driving from Connecticut down through Tennessee and over to Oklahoma. And so I was driving down the highways and long, long stretches of road. And the Tennessee highways aren't very exciting. There's some pretty extremist signage that goes up along the sides and of political sorts on both sides of the fence. And then I saw two really bizarre signs out in the, like, I'd been going 60 miles and hadn't seen a gas station. And one was Tennessee Pearl Farm, and the other was Tennessee Pot Farm. The Tennessee Pot Farm was
That
apparently,
for both.
so it was not legal there yet. And the Tennessee
Oh.
Pot Farm one was the feds selling off the gear that had been in this secret cave in Tennessee where they were growing all this weed. And this is 16 years ago. And so they were selling off all the lighting and grow equipment and stuff. And I'm thinking, who's going to go buy grow equipment from the feds?
Yeah.
Sale on that. But the Tennessee Pearl Farm got me to take a side trip. And I swear to you, I heard the banjos from what's the
Yeah.
yeah,
Deliverance.
right. Because I went winding through some tiny little roads and towns into the back of a trailer park that was one of the was going late in the day, it was getting to sunset. But by God, behind the trailer park was this tiny little museum and center for the pearl farm. And I got to watch something, I think it was probably on like celluloid. The video was so old, on how the pearls are harvested and so on, and got to see some gorgeous and outrageously priced pearls. But it was how I learned that Tennessee is the heart of pearl farming. So it'd be neat to do just a mineralogical tour of all the states and see what's the specialty in each. Anybody else have one that anything they want to show off that you're working on? Anything at the bench? Do you all want a sneak peek at some of the things in my box of mysteriously unfinished things?
Yes.
Sure.
All right, let me switch to that camera, which I gotta probably zoom out a little bit. Either that or no, and I got a spotlight for you guys. Unless that was Leanne going to bring something she wants to show off. Oh, she might. Wait a sec. We'll go to Leanne first. No? Okay, not ready to show off.
She's
No,
Where-
she's gonna take a picture.
oh, she's taking a picture.
Okay. Let me. Oh, I don't know what the waving of the finger means.
She's talking to someone.
Talk to us. Sounds like words.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Can.
Yes.
I'll tell you, I've been on the phone at the same time.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. Are we
I tell
spotlighting?
you, life goes on, doesn't it? Okay, I got into making this.
Wow. Is that a gold chain? You gotta hold your hand behind it. That usually helps. Is that silver or gold, Leanne?
Gold.
Holy
Mm.
cow, woman.
Tell us
Wow.
about it.
I want to tell you something. I have worked in silver for a long time.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to work in gold.
Yeah.
Me
That's
too.
it. That's it. And at this stage of my life, I need to just get on with it. So that's what I've done. And my husband is nice enough to give me a little bit of help with it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I've wanted to do for forever.
It's beautiful.
And so yeah, this is my chain.
Yeah. Is it business? I mean, is it weave or is it link?
Weave.
It is
Weave.
Got it.
No, it's a linking.
It's
It's
linked.
yeah, it's fused links.
Wow. So the
Yeah.
reason I was impressed with it being gold is that I have priced it would cost me to make a gold
I
Byzantine.
can tell you what it costs to make this. You ready?
No, but okay. Oh,
No, it has I alloyed out my gold.
yeah.
To
I've
what?
got just a minute. I've got a dog barking here. Hang on. I alloyed out. Excuse me. No,
No.
I got a little Yorkie on the floor here. Anyhow, I alloyed out my gold
Yeah.
and I did my fusing. I pulled my own wire.
Wow.
I can tell you what I've got in the. I'm embarrassed. Just a
Don't
minute.
be.
I'm embarrassed. Just a minute.
Well, we can't hear the dog.
Yeah. We're
That's
not
okay.
you.
Dogs bark anyway.
I pulled my own wire. I've made my own gold, and I'm talking chain, just chain.
Yeah.
The amount of gold, and I alloyed my old stuff. I did
Yeah.
everything. It takes me about, I'd say, 2 weeks to do the chain. I'm just talking chain.
Yeah.
And I made my own end caps.
Beautiful.
Did you
Um,
what level of alloy
it's 22.
to fuse?
22.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
to fuse. It's 22 carats. So I would say it has about 2,300. I'm talking chain material.
$1 in gold material.
At this market, what gold is worth now today.
I'm surprised it's that little.
2,300.
Wow.
I'm saying that's not my work.
No, I know. I'm surprised it's so little gold. That looks very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
double loop and loop.
yes.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Nice.
It's, you know what? It's lovely.
Good. I hope
You can wear it with anything.
Yeah.
It's heavy enough that you can put a sizable thing on it or
Yep.
nothing.
So tell us about the pendant too, because that looks like
Okay, so then I got into doing a Roman setting.
yeah.
So I did this pendant here. And I did the back.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got a few mistakes in it, of course, but I just thought, get with it, do it.
Yeah.
I have another one on too that I did that is faceted.
You did a Roman faceted set?
Yes,
Holy cow.
I just thought, okay, I have this really nice faceted stone. I'll try it.
Wow. So are you making, because it doesn't look like those are solid. Are you making?
Yeah, well, and I did my back too. Hang on.
Nice.
Yeah, you can't tell if it's domed or recessed.
Right. Is it a
It's a Roman setting and it's recessed. What I did was I cut through and then put the bezel inside and recessed it down.
cool?
It took a while to get it to fit,
Yeah.
you know, and if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
It was
intrigued by
a
the
pain. It was a pain in the butt.
I believe it.
Once I got going on it, I thought, okay, I have to do it.
That's fantastic.
You
I
know,
like
for you.
that one too.
pardon?
Like your sort of rough link chain on that one. I like
Oh,
the
this is just yeah, I did that too. That is it's just 18 karat and it's you know, paperclip type.
No, but it's perfectly, it's the right level of looks handmade for that piece in the appropriate era. I like it.
Does it? Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that too. I really do.
Very-
As opposed to this one being so much larger. Look at the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
This is a heftier size of a chain,
Yep.
and I think it fits it better.
It's fantastic. If you
Thank you. And I'll tell you what else I got into. Yeah, I have to tell you that I have gone back to jewelry arts. You know, Jeanette back in Manhattan.
no,
And
Jeanette
Oh.
King.
are you taking the same workshops that Jen McCaw has been taking, where she's
I
teaching?
don't know what they're doing.
No, whether the instructor is. Is Jen
It's
McCaw?
Jeanette. It's Jeanette.
No. A student, a fellow student, Jen McCaw. Is she from CMAG? May also be.
No. This person's is back in Manhattan.
I know.
No, I don't know anything about her.
Okay.
Jeanette she's gotten into making these beads. You know, they're fused together.
Oh, I think I know who she is. Yeah, I know who she is.
It's at Jewelry
She's,
Arts.
she's doing her
Yes.
classes in Tucson in
Oh,
February.
I think she's doing a workshop there,
Yeah.
Cool.
but that's not her studio.
No.
She works out of Manhattan normally.
So
Anyhow, I made this chain, and this is one of her forms that you use, and then you know, fuse it together. See,
cool.
bead, it's hollow.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm guessing
That
it's
was the challenge.
Was it? Because
Yeah.
I've gotten 2 of her forms and I haven't played around with it yet.
Start out, if you're not familiar with fusing and stuff, start out with fine silver.
Okay.
Although, you know, the beauty of gold, if it doesn't work out,
Yeah.
always melt it down and start again.
nice.
Yeah.
That
Well,
is the beauty of it. And the only thing that you don't do that with is if you're doing, you know, a granulation. You have to use pretty clean stuff. But this kind of stuff, you can, if it doesn't work out well, just melt it down, start again.
Nice. Well, that's beautiful work.
Does that
And-
make you feel good?
It is gorgeous. And in the meantime, you're also winning tennis tournaments, aren't you?
Me?
Yeah, am I mixing you up with somebody else? I thought you were a big.
Yes, I don't do tennis.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was mixing you up with someone else.
Let's see what I have a little website. I have a little site on Instagram,
Instagram, okay.
and I haven't posted anything. I haven't posted these things for a while, but I put a lot of my stuff on there.
Yeah.
And just, you know, just to show it. There's a couple of the people I know that live back east that do a few things, so it's a good way to keep in touch with them as well.
Nice. I would love to see photos. If you have good photos of that piece you're holding right now.
Do you know what I'd love to talk to you about sometime as a really good place to get a good business card
Sure.
and a person that really does good photos?
So the photos I can help you with. The person that does my product photography is Cole Roger, and she's based out of North Carolina.
Yeah.
She is priced according to the caliber of her work, is the way that I'll put it. And it takes a little bit of turnaround time for when you want to send her X number of pieces, and she works with you on the day she's shooting.
Okay. So you send it to her, she takes it, and then she returns it.
Yep. And then if
Does that work well for you?
pardon, it's been
that-
she does amazing work. All the really good product shots on my website are her work.
Okay.
Model shots, and you're in an area that has a big enough group to make it worthwhile for them. A couple named Donna Dufault and Scott Erb, ERB. Some of the nicest human beings you will ever work with. They do model shots. They're traveling photographers right now after having been based out of Massachusetts. But if, for example, you're part of a local guild, and you know the guild is getting it has 6 or 8 people that want to work together, you can share the costs of doing
Yeah.
a shoot with them.
If that would happen, I'd appreciate that. Okay.
CMAG
Really?
one, we had 7 or 8 of our people doing it in Portland area, and we'll do another one probably with their current schedule in the spring. They're going to be down in California for much of the winter.
Okay. If it would be ever so kind to contact me, I would totally appreciate it.
Sure. Can you drop me an email reminder? I keep a running list of people that want to know when they're coming to town. But if any of you
Okay.
area group
And,
that
and also, I've really gone around the world regarding a good business card. And
you mean designing the card or printing it?
both.
My recommendation for people who want designers is that there's a website called Fiverr, FIVERR.com. And there
FIBER.
like the number 5 spelled
Yeah,
out with
yeah.
extra R in it. And it has designers there, ranging from people that will charge you $50 to people that'll charge you $1,000.
Sure.
If you do not have your own logo already,
I do. I
Okay.
have it.
then it's about finding somebody that can take your logo and whatever branding information you want
Yeah.
and together. And what I've found is plan what your budget is to do the design work separate from printing. Printing, once you have it done, you can do it at Vistaprint. That's one of the easiest ones, or
Yes,
the
Moo
one, Moo cards, Moo print, something like
Uh-huh.
that. I recommend, if you're trying to do cards with photography on them, that you do more than one if you're doing shows. So I, for example, have a big card and my little business card sized one. My business card sized one has one piece of jewelry on it. My larger cards have sometimes a triptych of pieces, so that when I'm at shows and people are interested in a theme, they can look at that on the card. And I personally do my own layout for those, but I have had people help me with the actual logo design and so on. And Fiverr is going to be all over the map for skill set. So what I do is, if my budget can afford it, is I plan to have 2 or 3 people design a concept for me, and I work with the one that I like the most. So I know I'm paying more than one person, and I'm just sort of tossing 2 of the ideas out, right?
Okay,
If you can't afford it, just really look at their portfolio.
got it.
Who's doing what you like, and ask them to quote you on it. Some people have package deals that are all the same. Some people have, I'll give you 3 designs and you choose the one you want, and then we do a second round, that kind of thing.
Okay, Okay.
You can also limit it. You can do filters on it, like make sure it's somebody in the US that you can deal with on your hours
oh,
versus
right, yeah,
whatever works for you.
yeah. Well, this is very helpful, and I'll pop you an email regarding a photograph business.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Any other showing and telling of things?
well, not really, other than this. I like I said, I've been fooling around with a couple gym setting ideas, and I haven't struck the right thing yet. And I've been doing a lot of prototypes, if you know what I'm saying.
Good.
Before I get into something, I'll make them out of silver and maybe do the bezel in gold or something instead of doing the whole thing in gold, which I really ultimately will do. It's just that I'm experimenting with, prongs that come up, like your band up here, and then a bezel set on top.
Nice.
I haven't found the right balance. I've seen what I want to do, but of course, nobody will tell you how to do it. So you have to figure it out yourself.
Well, if you join the next year's session, bring some photographs of the things that you are interested in, and maybe we'll talk
Good.
about a group about how we would each approach it, because that's exactly the kind of technical challenge that we're going to try and go over in the workshop. Did anybody else have stuff that they wanted to show off? I'm seeing Deborah saying she is recovering from, goodness. So hopefully your studio will get back together soon and we'll get you working. And I hope your recovery is going quickly. Anybody else want to show anything before I show you a couple of the what's in the box answers? No? Okay. I'll switch over and spotlight me. Oop, got stuff from what we were working with. So, when I talk about things that are 15 years old, it's this corner. I used to do some cast work. This was one of my early collections in which I was doing wax carved. These are not from actual leaves and so on. These are my interpretation of them. And I did a whole series of pieces. And the simple things that I was doing with them, I was doing individual earrings and pins and things like that. And my wildest that or pins and things like that. But I haven't been selling that collection, and it's not really my style anymore, except that I'm still left over with a bunch of castings. So one of the things I've been playing around with is whether I was going to make a necklace out of the various leafy bits or what. But they've sort of been hanging out because I wasn't willing to throw out all these castings, since they're beautiful pieces unto themselves. So that's one of the older pieces in the mix. And then I have a lot of partially done hollow form things. So I was playing for a while with stones combined with hollow forms, and this is somewhere in here is a necklace that I'm going to enjoy making. I just never got back to it because other hollow form pieces came out before it in my brain. And then I have fun with water cast for elements for earrings, but I really wanted to play around a little bit. Sorry, this camera is harder to move around. In fact, I'm going to switch back to, no, I can't move that one this far. Never mind, I have to work with this one. So I'm playing around with water casting as a chain element, which has a textural thing that appeals to me. Probably going to be setting some stones in there or pearls or something, but I never got around to finishing this first chain to see what I wanted to land on with that. This is some palm wood that has been calling my name, and these hollow forms need backing, and I got stuck on what I wanted for movement between the pieces. Whether I was going to, so they're literally not backed because I don't know yet whether I want to run tubing through them to have some kind of wire or chain, or the current most likely thing is that I'll be doing square tube connective hinges between them. I just have to determine whether there's going to be enough flexibility to it. And the other thing that I need to figure out is how am I closing this? So what is my clasp mechanism in this unit? Then I've got some stones that I was designing a companion piece to something that I do in meteorite, and I got as far as getting the stones ready, didn't really like the marquee shape in these. So this may have to go from being a necklace that was going to be a series of connective links to actually being something that has some nice draping of metal pieces interspersed, and it becomes something sort of pendant-like out of the end of it. But I don't know yet what that's going to become. Another old piece, I had done a wax carving to try and set these two stones in, but I didn't like the quality of the casting, but I really like the idea of it, and I want it to be a little less spiky than it came out. So I may think about rebuilding this in fabrication, which at the time that I did the wax work on this, I wasn't capable of fabricating what I wanted, so I did the wax instead.
Can you fit a little closer to that one?
Sure.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a really sculptural piece, and these two stones just fit so perfectly together. The tourmalinated quartz, rutilated quartz, I always mix those up. Want to do something like that, but better. So some of what's in the box is, at the time, my skill wasn't up to what I wanted to achieve on it. Here's another pair of stones where I started. This stone is so cool and so interesting to me. I started building little units like the crystal forms in it out of square tubing, but I don't know what I want to do with them. And then something I've been playing around with but not successful at yet is this mixed metal. I'm trying to create sheet metal that is these little cubes of color, copper and silver in this case. But I'm not fusing it well enough. I'm not going full on Kyumbu, I mean, full on Mokumegane techniques in it, which I probably need to in order to get what I want. But I'm liking the idea of working with that. And then this is the piece that I started for, oops, I'm not in that corner yet, am I? This last piece in the back corner is a reversible Mokumegane necklace that I started for a video project when I was being recorded for an About the Artist project, and I didn't get finished with it before the show that it was for. And I'm also not entirely sure that I'm pleased with the configuration of the links. I think it needs a little more stability. Although I am quite pleased with the integrated clasp, which is a toggle clasp. Oops, out of range. So those are just a few of the 50 some odd projects that are in my box for next year.
Mhm.
I don't know which of them I'm gonna grab first. Yeah, old cast items, the recycling just hurts. I can't recycle. I mean, because I love the pieces, Leanne. Leanne, same issue. She has old cast items from another era that don't fit the style. And I don't think that twigs and leaves are out of style, especially in the Pacific Northwest. I think that basic twigs and leaves might be out of style. So I got to work on that. But we'll see.
It doesn't fit my style.
Right. Oh yeah, very much is not what I'm
It's just
currently working. But I love the pieces themselves, the individual pieces, and I
Yeah.
want to see something more interesting. So yeah.
I just scrapped them.
I
I have a
can't,
lot.
I
A
can't,
lot.
I have plenty of
Actually, I got a little money
I
because
know,
they're sitting in the drawer.
I
I
know.
want money for other things.
I have plenty of scrap I need to send back for that purpose. I actually try to do as little return to the refinery as possible. So I do use a lot of my scrap in a couple of my collections. But yeah, it's I
The
can't
silver, I get rid of it.
I can't part with the castings. I just can't do it.
You're not ready.
Have you considered just taking like a few of them and not making it as a collection per se, but just like
Oh
a
yeah.
few of them and just like, like when I do my shows, I always call it my gas money, where some pieces are like affordable for someone who loves your work but can't necessarily
Right.
afford a stunning big piece. I always do that because there are people who can't. And because they're already made and they're really, really kind of cool and textured and all of that, it's one way to be able to put it out there and sell it. I don't
In
know.
the case of the castings, they literally weren't selling. I had earrings on my bench. I had necklaces on my bench. They just weren't going. And my work has moved so far away from them in terms of style and price point that it takes away from my main collections if I keep them out at the same time. They're not stylistically close enough to the rest of my work. And so I don't want them to be the thing that somebody buys if they just want a piece of my work. What I need is to take them and recreate and turn them into something that does feel current for my style. The other challenge that I'm up against is in this year in particular, I've started to specifically be working on raising the average price point on my bench, on my table. I'm trying to get away from the bread and butter work because it's not what I enjoy and it's not sustainable for me. And work on the large one-of-a-kind statement pieces. So I'm in a transitional period. And so part of it is, how do I elevate the things that are years old into something that is acceptably my style still? Which is not what everybody will have. There's perfectly legitimate reasons to do exactly what you've said. And I have spent years doing that. This is not the time for me for my work. That's not the current process that I'm on. So yeah, if we'll talk about when and where to get rid of things and when and where to reclaim them as something else. And for example, I take part in Snow Farm's seconds sale every year. And what I use it for is to sell down collections that I'm no longer making or that are no longer in keeping with my current style of work. Because it's still quality work. It's just
Yeah.
not what I want my name to be associated with on an everyday, you're looking at there's no place for it on my website anymore. So
Yeah.
it doesn't fit. It doesn't work.
Then you just melt it. You say goodbye.
Not willing to do that.
Seriously,
There's
seriously, that's
twigs.
what I did.
I love those
I
twigs.
did that. I know
Or-
it costs money, but it's like you're saying, no, I don't want to do it that way because it's not my style anymore. And yes, it's a lot of work and they're beautiful, but it doesn't represent me anymore. So then how do you make it represent you?
That's exactly what I'm going to be talking through in the course of the sessions next year is this worth keeping? What do I do with it to make it stay in style?
Right.
So I've been selling these as individual earrings, individual necklaces, pins, right? So to
Yeah.
me, when I start building things that are more structural and architectural, and I start to build up many of them into something, or in the case of the one piece I've been looking for, it's going to be a whole chain of these twigs, then it becomes something more in line with the high-end, large-scale work that I've been doing. It's the individual the reason that these have survived years of me culling, because boy, I cull. I am not shy about tossing things out for good. These have survived because there's something still talking to me in them. And
Okay.
that's part of the exercise of the about project, right? Is finding out which we're going to take apart and which we're going to recreate and which ones we're really going to say goodbye to. And we'll have a mix of all of them, that I'm showing you 6 of the things in my 50 plus, maybe it might be a little bigger than 50 right now because I've been stockpiling pile of things that are unfinished. So yeah.
Yeah.
That is what I have to show you, gang. Any last thoughts before we say goodnight to the Cogswell project for good?
Repeat one more time what you're doing next year with this class.
It's not quite a class. It's more of a collaborative demonstration slash open studio kind of thing. It's still going to be the third Wednesdays, only once a month. And it's called About a Box of Unfinished Things.
Good.
And
Right.
so it's all of us to bring whatever we have to our benches and look at it again, because we all have that, whether it's 1 or 50 sitting in the I never got back to it projects. And I'm going to be showing some of my design process. I'm going to talk through some of the thinking I do when I'm looking at a partially done or stuck project. We're going to talk about some of the technical challenges that jam people up, myself included, like why I didn't get to the finish line on some of these. And then I'll be working on exercises. So 1 month it may be that I'm showing, I've promised one of them at least will have an abstract stone setting because people wanted one of the prong or
So the
yeah,
first meeting is January
20th, I think, whatever that
Wednesday.
third Wednesday in January
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
You will email us, right?
So you should have already gotten a lengthy email from me. If not, then
Yeah.
I don't have your current email address in the list. But I also at the top of the chat is the link to sign up for that Zoom because
Okay,
it's a
okay.
separate Zoom from this.
Okay.
So it's the box of unfinished, a box of unfinished things, just to get me that nice acronym that I needed.
17. 17.
Up 20th. Okay. So whatever
17.
that,
Okay, a box is only one box, right?
meaning you can bring as many boxes as you want.
Okay,
So my box evolves. Sometimes it's one box. Sometimes I've sorted it into the really high priority things or the really interesting things versus the, I don't even want to think about it things. When I first start on our first session, I'm going to show them all. You're going to see the massive pile all laid out so that you guys can help me narrow it down in our first pass. So we're going to do a couple of, the first session is really going to be talking about that process of finding something that brings back a light in you, finding the one that's speaking to you now out of the pool. But yeah, if you've got a treasure chest or if you've got a little tiny music box filled with these projects, it's up to you. I don't care how many are in it. You're going to bring whatever you bring to it, or you can just hang out and watch, because mostly what you're going to see from me is overcoming specific techniques, probably some clasp building along the way, some stone setting, some throwing things against the wall, you know, stomping on them a few times, pounding on things with hammers. It's going to be whatever is catching me at the time. And you guys will discover that I'm not going to go end to end on any one project. It's part of why my box gets so full, is that I
Yeah.
start something and I get to a certain point and then I need to do something else for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Especially if you take classes.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe it's about taking something from a class that you didn't go back to practice and bringing it into something that you're already working on. Yeah. Lots to do on that. So John Cogswell, our thanks go out to him for his wonderful book and for his years of teaching. And I hope that I will do justice. But now that you have done this, you're supposed to fly and be free and go teach others what you have learned from John's work. And I hope that this video is going to go up probably by Christmas-ish when I get some time. When I catch my breath. But thank you for following along on the journey, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one.
Yay.
Thank you, Rachel.
Merry Christmas. Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year.
Merry
Bye-bye.
Christmas, Happy New Year, Merry everything, and
Yes. Good
all
night,
that
all.
stuff.
Health,
Good night.
happiness.
Thanks so much.
Aloha.
Aloha.